She was just my sister's friend, older, newly divorced, and crying over a photo when I walked in. I was supposed to help her move boxes, but I didn't leave. And that night, everything changed. One coffee turned into something I never saw coming. Ethan Carter wasn't exactly thrilled to be spending his Saturday lifting cardboard boxes. He just worked 5 12-hour shifts in a row, and his idea of a perfect weekend was pizza, a cold beer, and zoning out to reruns of Parks and Rec. But when his older sister Julie called and said, "Hey, Rachel could use a hand moving in," he couldn't say no. Not just because it was Julie asking, but because of who Rachel was. Rachel Monroe, 36, smart, beautiful, funny in that quick, sharp way that made you lean in just to keep up. She'd been Julie's best friend since forever. And to Ethan, she'd always been Rachel, the grown-up girl who once gave him extra cookies and teased him about his baby face when he was still in high school. But now, 10 years later, Ethan wasn't a scrawny teenager anymore. He was 27, tall, strong from years of construction work, and if he was honest, maybe just a little curious to see what Rachel looked like now. When he pulled into the driveway of her new rental, a cozy 2-bedroom bungalow with flower boxes and peeling paint, the moving truck was already half unloaded. Rachel was sitting on the porch step, hair tied up in a loose bun, sunglasses perched on her head, sipping iced coffee and looking overwhelmed. She looked up when he slammed his truck. Door shut, her face lit up. "Ethan Carter. Wow, you're actually on time." "Hey, I'm always on time when someone bribes me with the promise of free pizza," he said, walking up the steps. She stood brushing dust from her shorts. She was wearing a soft gray t-shirt and denim cutoffs. And even with the stress in her eyes, there was a grace about her that hit him square in the chest. "You came for pizza, huh?" she smirked. "Not because your sister told you I was drowning in boxes." "That too," he said with a shrug, then offered a half grin. "But mostly pizza." Rachel laughed, and it was the first time she had all day. The next few hours were a blur of sweating, lifting, and strategically avoiding small talk about her ex-husband. Ethan could tell the divorce was recent. It hung around her like smoke in the way she moved carefully through rooms, unsure what should go where. He didn't push. He just moved boxes, cracked jokes, and let the silence settle naturally when it needed to. At one point, she handed him a heavy box labeled Memories with shaking hands. "You okay?" he asked, not prying, just soft. Rachel blinked hard and nodded. "Yeah, just didn't expect to feel so weird seeing my life in boxes." "Yeah," Ethan said. "Breakups are like that." She looked at him surprised. "You say that like, I've had a few crash and burns," he said with a grin. "One girl dumped me because I put pineapple on pizza. Apparently, that was a character flaw." Rachel laughed again, the real kind this time, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. It was nearly sundown when they got the last of the boxes inside. Ethan wiped his forehead with the bottom of his shirt, revealing a strip of toned stomach. Rachel noticed and immediately looked away, cheeks flushed. "Beer?" she asked, opening the fridge. "Thought you'd never ask." They settled on the back porch with 2 cold beers, watching the sky turn purple behind the trees. A comfortable silence fell over them, interrupted only by the soft chirp of crickets and the occasional passing car. "You didn't have to stay this long," Rachel said after a while. "I didn't mind," Ethan replied. "You needed help. Still, you probably had better things to do." "I didn't," he said honestly. "Not today." She looked at him, then really looked at the man he'd become. He wasn't just Julie's kid brother anymore. He was grounded, kind, and if she admitted it, far too good-looking for her peace of mind. Rachel exhaled. "It's weird being back here. 10 years away, and nothing feels the same. Except this porch," Ethan said. "Still cacks in the same spot." She smiled, grateful for the grounding. "I keep waiting for it to hit me," she said. "That I really left him. That I'm really on my own." "You're not on your own," Ethan said, his voice quiet. "You've got people who care." Rachel looked down at her bottle, then said softly, "Back when I was married, I always thought if I ever left, I'd feel free, like the hard part would be over." "And it's not?" Ethan asked. "No," she said. "Now it's just quiet." He nodded. "Sometimes the quiet is the worst part." They sat like that a while longer, the sun dipping below the horizon. Then Rachel stood, brushing imaginary dust off her knees. I should start unpacking some of those boxes. Ethan stood too. You want help? Rachel hesitated, then shook her head. No, but stay a while. Just a little longer. Ethan looked at her. The porch light cast her in gold, softening the grief in her face. He nodded. Yeah, he said. I'll stay. Ethan returned to Rachel's place the next afternoon, toolbox in hand, even though no one had asked him to bring it. The screen door creaked as he stepped inside. You said this place had a loose cabinet door, right? Rachel looked up from where she was crouched near a pile of boxes in the living room. Her hair was down today, framing her face in soft, dark waves, and she wore an old college t-shirt and leggings, comfortable, casual, and somehow still stunning. She blinked at the toolbox in his hand. You're seriously here to fix a cabinet among other things, he said with a grin. Thought I'd make myself useful. Rachel smirked, but said nothing as she went back to opening boxes. The afternoon sunlight poured in through the windows, casting the space in a warm amber glow. Ethan crouched down to inspect the cabinet under the kitchen sink, half listening to the rustle of Rachel unpacking across the room. Then suddenly a soft gasp. He turned. Rachel was sitting back on her heels, holding a photo frame in her hands. Her eyes were glassy. She didn't say anything, but Ethan didn't need to ask. It was a wedding photo. Her younger, happier, or maybe just pretending. She pressed her lips together, then wiped at her eyes quickly as if ashamed. Sorry, she said. I didn't expect to find this one today. Ethan stood slowly, wiping his hands on a towel. Want me to put it away? Rachel hesitated, then shook her head. No, I need to. It's just strange. I thought I'd be more numb by now. He sat on the edge of the couch across from her. You don't have to pretend it doesn't still hurt, he said. Even if it was the right thing, she stared at the photo. I thought we'd grow old together. I really did. But somewhere along the line, we stopped talking and then we stopped laughing and then I don't even know who he was anymore. Ethan didn't rush in with platitudes. He let the silence carry the weight of her words. After a moment, Rachel laughed bitterly. Look at me, crying on the floor, surrounded by half-empty boxes like I'm in some sad rom-com. You're not sad, Ethan said gently. You're strong. Starting over is brave. Rachel looked at him, eyes soft. You're a lot more insightful than I remember, he shrugged. Time does that. She put the photo frame face down on the floor. You want coffee? He nodded. Yeah, sure. 10 minutes later, they were seated at the small kitchen table, steaming mugs in front of them. The tension had lightened, replaced by something warmer, familiar, comfortable. Rachel stirred cream into her cup. So what about you? Still single? Still single, Ethan confirmed. Dating here and there, but nothing serious. Why not? He smirked. Hard to find someone who can tolerate how much I talk about drywall and socket wrenches. Rachel rolled her eyes. Please. You're smart, kind, and I mean, look at you. If I were 25. She trailed off, cheeks coloring slightly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. If you were 25, what? Rachel bit her lip. Forget it. There was a beat. Then I wouldn't ask you to forget it, Ethan said quietly. She met his gaze. The air between them shifted, gently, subtly, but unmistakably. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, shattering the moment. She got up quickly, muttering, Sorry, just a text from Julie checking in. Ethan watched her go. Watched how the moment dissolved like sugar in hot coffee. Later, as he was fixing a crooked picture frame in the hallway, Rachel hovered nearby, arms crossed. Why are you really here, Ethan? He looked over his shoulder. I told you the cabinet. No, she cut in. I mean, really. You could have dropped those boxes off and disappeared. But you came back. He set the screwdriver down and turned toward her fully. Because I like being around you, he said simply. Because when I saw you sitting on those porch steps yesterday, looking like the world had just tipped sideways, I didn't want you to be alone. Rachel blinked. The quiet was thick now. Not awkward, but electric. Okay, she said finally. You win. You can keep fixing things. Ethan smiled. Permission granted. She smiled back. Just don't fix my heart without asking. The line was meant to be light, a joke, but it landed between them like something more. I wouldn't dream of it, Ethan said, voice low. That night, after he left, Rachel stood in the doorway for a long time, watching the tail lights of his truck disappear. She wrapped her arms around herself, heart full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. But one thing was certain. She no longer felt quite so alone. Ethan knocked gently on Rachel's door just after 5 o'clock on Friday, umbrella dripping in his hand. Rain had started around noon and hadn't let up since. A soft, steady drum beat that turned the town gray and sleepy. She opened the door barefoot, wearing a cozy gray cardigan over a simple black tank top and jeans. "You're really braving the weather for crooked shelves." Ethan grinned and held up a small toolbox in one hand, a record in the other. Shelves and vinyl. Rachel stepped aside with a laugh. "Come in, handyman/DJ." The place was starting to feel lived. In blankets had found couches, candles flickered on windowsills, and on the floor by the wall, a stack of records sat beside an old player she'd unpacked that morning. "I don't even know if this thing still works," she said, eyeing the turntable. Ethan knelt beside it. Only one way to find out. As he fiddled with knobs and wires, Rachel watched him from the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Something about having him there, a presence without pressure, had begun to feel natural, comforting. She'd spent so many nights in her old life hosting fake dinners for people she didn't even like. Now, this felt better than any of that. Quite real. "Where'd you get the record?" she asked as he balanced the disc gently on. "The turntable. My mom used to play it when she cleaned the house on Sundays." Ethan said, "I figured it deserved a second life." As music crackled through the speaker. Classic rock, warm and nostalgic. Rachel leaned against the counter and smiled. "I've got wine," she offered. Ethan looked up. "I've got ears." She brought over 2 glasses and sat on the floor across from him, legs crossed, bottle between them. "I never thought I'd feel okay again in a space like this," she said quietly. "After the divorce, I thought I'd always associate home with him with what fell apart." Ethan took a sip of wine. And now she looked around. "Now I think maybe home isn't a place. Maybe it's people who show up." They sat in silence for a moment, the record spinning soft notes into the air. Then Rachel tilted her head. "You always this good at showing up?" Ethan smirked. "I try." Rachel took another sip of wine, studying him. "Were you always this patient when we were younger?" He laughed. "No, I was annoying as hell. You just never noticed because you were too busy teasing Julie." She grinned. "Your sister's a saint for not spilling how cute her little brother turned out." That line hung there, playful but charged. Ethan leaned back on his hands. "You think I'm cute?" Rachel raised her brows. "Don't fish." He laughed again, but inside his chest buzzed like the record needle against the vinyl. Later, as the rain picked up and wind pressed against the windows, they moved to the couch. Ethan fixed the crooked shelf, but they barely talked while he did. It was companionable silence. Rachel handed him another glass of wine as he sat down. "Do you think I'm hard to talk to?" she asked suddenly. He looked over at her, surprised. "No." "Why?" She hesitated. "After the divorce, I realized I'd gone years without anyone actually asking me how I felt, and I got used to not saying much. Now it's like I want to talk, but I'm out of practice." Ethan's voice was gentle. "You're not hard to talk to, Rachel. You're just used to people who didn't really listen." She stared at him a beat longer than comfortable, then looked away. "You're dangerous. You know that?" He laughed softly. "I've been told." The wine made things warmer, softer, and as the storm rumbled outside, Rachel stood suddenly and reached for another record. "This one's my favorite," she said. But no judging. Ethan recognized the first few notes immediately. "You like Norah Jones?" he asked. "She got me through some of my worst nights," Rachel said, curling up beside him. "She deserves my loyalty." As the music played, something shifted again between them, unspoken, but present. Their knees touched. Neither of them moved. "Why are you really here?" Rachel asked quietly, not looking at him. Ethan looked at her. "We already talked about this." "No," she said. "Not the cabinets or the shelves. I mean here in my life." He was quiet for a long time. "Then because I used to have a crush on you. A big one. But you were always older, untouchable." Rachel turned to face him fully. "And now you're here. You're real. And I'm not 18 anymore." She looked at him. This boy now man she remembered from summers and family barbecues. He'd grown up kind, strong, and somehow still had the same earnest heart behind his eyes. "You know I'm a mess," she whispered. Ethan didn't hesitate. "We all are." She reached out then, almost without thinking, and placed her hand over his. The moment lingered, but then the record ended. A soft scratch replaced the music, and she pulled her hand back gently, stood, and walked toward the record player. "I should get some sleep," she said softly. "It's been a long week." Ethan stood too, sensing the change. He walked toward the door, toolbox in hand, but before he opened it, he turned back. "Thanks for letting me hang out." Rachel smiled, tired, but warm. "Thanks for fixing more than just shelves." And this time when he left, she didn't feel like she was losing something. She felt like something was starting, something careful, something new. Ethan hadn't planned to stop by again so soon. But Saturday afternoon found him at the hardware store picking up mulch for his mom's garden. And somehow a bag of solar string lights and a potted lavender plant ended up in his cart too. He told himself it was just a gesture, something small to thank Rachel for the wine, the music, the kind of evening that lingers in your chest even after you've gone home. He knocked on her door just after 5. Rachel opened it surprised and smiling in a soft sage green sweater and black joggers. Her hair was tied up, a pencil stuck through the messy bun. "I wasn't expecting you," she said. Ethan held up the lavender plant. "I brought a peace offering," she laughed. "What war are we ending?" "None. I just figured your porch looked like it could use something living." Rachel leaned on the door frame and gave him a look. "You're a little too good at this." "At what?" "Showing up when I'm just about to pour a glass of wine." Ethan grinned. "Then I'm right on time." She let him in. Out back, Rachel's small patio still had unopened boxes tucked near the siding and a dusty old fire pit sitting unused in the center. She followed him out, holding a wine glass for each of them. "You didn't have to do this," she said as he started sweeping leaves and adjusting the chairs. "I know," he said. "I wanted to." The sun was beginning to dip, casting soft gold through the clouds. He plugged in the solar string lights along the porch railing. And when they clicked on one by one, Rachel actually gasped. "They're perfect," she whispered. "You're easy to impress. I haven't had someone do something nice for me in a while. That kind of resets the bar." They sat down by the fire pit, and Ethan struck a match. The smell of wood smoke joined the air, and for a while they didn't talk. They just sipped wine and watched the sky turn pink. Eventually Rachel said, "You ever feel like you're building your life from scratch? Like no blueprint, no instructions, just you holding broken pieces?" Ethan looked at her all the time. She nodded, staring into the flames. "My ex and I met when I was 22, married by 24. I thought that was it, that I had my person." "What happened?" Rachel took a breath. "He wanted someone quieter, someone who didn't speak up when things felt wrong. I became smaller every year I was with him. One day, I didn't recognize myself anymore." Ethan didn't say anything at first. He let her speak. He didn't try to fix it. "I'm glad you left," he said finally. She turned to look at him. "Me too." Then her eyes drifted toward the living room window. "There's a photo I haven't been able to pack away." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Want to show me?" She hesitated. "I'm afraid if I do, I'll start crying again like the other night." "I don't mind." After a moment, she stood and went inside. He followed her in slowly, giving her space. Rachel knelt beside a small wooden box on a lower shelf and pulled out a picture frame. She handed it to Ethan. It was her wedding photo. She looked younger, smiling, radiant. Her now ex-husband had a hand around her waist and a practiced grin on his face. "He never wanted kids," she said softly. "That was the deal breaker. I wanted to be a mom. He wanted to stay young." Ethan looked at her. "You would have been an incredible mom." Rachel blinked hard. Then she smiled. "Thanks." She set the photo back in the box. "But maybe it's not too late." They sat down on the floor, backs against the couch. "I'm glad you're here," she said after a long pause. "Right now, or like in this chapter of your life?" he asked, half joking. Rachel turned her head. "Both." Ethan's heart did a quiet somersault. He studied her face, the freckles, the laugh lines, the soft trace of vulnerability she didn't bother to hide around him. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? A guy who used to be a kid, someone who'd make me feel older. But you make me feel. She stopped, looked away. Young again. Ethan swallowed. You don't feel older to me. You feel right? They looked at each other for a beat too long. Then Rachel gave a nervous laugh and stood. Okay, you need dinner. I'm not letting you keep saving me and going hungry. I thought I was just bringing flowers, he said, following her to the kitchen. Lavender is not a meal, she teased. She made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Simple. But Ethan swore it was the best he'd ever had. They sat at the counter, elbows close. As she poured more wine, she asked, So, you really had a crush on me back then? Ethan smirked. You were the cool older friend. You wore leather boots and drove a convertible? I had a Toyota Camry. Well, it felt like a convertible. Rachel laughed. And now, Ethan leaned forward. Now you're more than a crush. Her face changed then. Something softened like she'd been holding up a wall for years and finally decided to let a bit of light in. You're going to make this complicated, she whispered. Is that a bad thing? She didn't answer, just looked down at her hands. Rachel, he said gently. You don't owe me anything. We don't have to label this, but I like being around you. I like how you think, how you feel everything fully. I like that you remember people's coffee orders and hum when you're packing. I like you. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was sacred. She stood, walked around the island, and kissed his cheek. Thank you, she whispered. Then she walked him to the door. The rain had stopped. The night was cool and damp, and the string lights glowed behind him as he turned back to look at her one last time. Rachel smiled, small and real. Same time next week? He asked. Same time, she said. But something in her voice promised. Next time might be different. Ethan arrived just before dusk, but Rachel was already out back. He could see her through the kitchen window, wrapped in a light cardigan, sipping wine by the fire pit they'd sat at days ago. She'd added cushions to the chairs, planted the lavender he brought, and strung more lights across the fence. It looked like a home now. When he stepped out, she glanced back over her shoulder and smiled. I thought you might show up early. You said same time. I took that as invitation, Ethan said, holding up a brown paper bag. Also, I brought dinner, Rachel grinned. Please tell me it's not grilled cheese again. Pulled pork from DeMarco's and the good cornbread. Marry me, she joked. He froze just a second longer than he should have. Rachel laughed. Kidding mostly. They sat together, eating by firelight. The sky was soft with peach clouds, the kind of spring evening that made everything feel a little more possible. Ethan watched her as she picked at her cornbread, lost in thought. You okay? He asked. Rachel nodded slowly. I think I'm just realizing this is the first time in years I feel settled. Not perfectly okay, but better. He waited. She took a sip of wine. I sold the last of my old furniture today. The dresser he hated. The table he bought just to impress people. It's like I finally get to choose what stays. Ethan leaned back. You've rebuilt so much in so little time. Rachel smiled softly. Not alone. They finished eating, and he helped her clear the plates. As they rinsed dishes in the sink, Rachel looked at him sideways. I've been thinking about something, she said. Ethan dried his hands. Yeah, you remember the first time we met. He blinked. When you helped my sister dye her hair pink and convinced me to eat raw cookie dough behind Mom's back? Rachel laughed. That one. You were 25. I was 17. And I thought you were the coolest woman on the planet. You were a lanky kid with messy hair and way too much cologne. Hey, he said, pretending to be wounded. That was signature Axe spray. I rest my case. They laughed until they couldn't breathe. Rachel turned serious. I thought then he's going to be someone good. I just didn't know I'd get to see it. Ethan's heart thudded. I never forgot you, she met his gaze. I didn't plan this, she said quietly. I didn't plan to move back and find someone, least of all you. But here we are, he said. Rachel reached out and touched his hand. Here we are. There was a long pause, a charged silence. Her fingers curled around his. I think I'm ready to stop waiting for the perfect moment, she said. This feels real safe, and that scares me a little. Ethan stepped closer, then let it scare us both. He kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't full of fire and frenzy. It was warm, certain, like something finally arriving after years of being on its way. When they pulled back, Rachel pressed her forehead to his. "You're going to complicate everything," she whispered. "Really hope so." They spent the rest of the night on the patio talking about nothing and everything. Music, family, what their favorite pizza topping said about their personality types. As the fire died down, Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you came over that first day," she said. "I almost didn't," Ethan admitted. "I thought maybe you'd want space." Rachel tilted her head up to look at him. "I didn't need space. I needed something real." 2 months later, the porch had new flower beds, wind chimes, and a two-person swing. Ethan helped Rachel paint the spare bedroom. She never said the word, but something about the pale yellow walls felt like a new beginning. One morning, as they stood side by side brushing their teeth, Rachel said, "You still want kids one day?" Ethan met her eyes in the mirror. "I want a life, a full one with you." She smiled at his reflection. "Then I guess we'd better start dreaming." At his sister's next barbecue, someone asked Rachel how she met Ethan. She grinned, sipping lemonade. "He was just helping me move some boxes," she said. "But then I asked him to stay and thank God he